Io ho il piacere di presentare il professor Sabada. Il professor Sabada si è laureato a Bilbao, dove ha fatto anche il suo training in cardiochirurgia, training che poi ha completato con degli stage a Leeds e poi in Australia a Perth. Lavora a Pamplona e il suo ruolo è quello appunto di direttore del Centro di Ricerca e Innovazioni Cardiovascolari presso l'Università di Navarra. La sua ricerca è stata fondamentalmente focalizzata sulla patologia chirurgica dell'aorta e sulla terapia rigenerativa del miocardio. Oggi abbiamo l'onore di averlo qui con noi e ci dirà sul Resident Training How to Put Together Translational Science and Innovative Techniques. Prego, professor Sabada.
Well, thank you first, Alessandro, and the rest of the organizing committee for inviting me to be here. It's a huge privilege and an honor, and I love it being here. So thank you very much. I also want to thank Alessandro for the title of the presentation, because I'm afraid I don't have an answer, but it's a subject which is very close to my heart and something which I have been thinking about for a number of years. You said in my introduction, I come from Pamplona in the region of Navarra. They're in the northern part of Spain. So before trying to answer the question, how can we do that, I would like to make some reflections and think about the context in which we are and in the context in which we will be in the next few years. And Bob Dylan is not here just because he's won a Nobel Prize. He's here because of one of his most famous songs, The Times That Are Changing. And it's true, times are changing. Times change all the time. Heraclitus said that change was the essence of the universe. You could never step twice on the same river because the water kept flowing. So change is not new, but something is new about change. They say that in the last 20 years, surgery has evolved more than in the previous 3,000 years due to the new technological developments. When our intuition, when we think about future, we think in a linear manner. But how things evolve, how information technology evolves, and most of what we do is based on information technology, it evolves in an exponential manner. When we think about 30 steps, as I said, we think linearly, we take 30 steps. But if we take 30 steps exponentially, we walk up to 1,000,000 steps. What do I mean by all this? That change is so fast and it's going to change so much faster that it's a moving target. So we cannot make predictions. We cannot know how we should organize our training in the future. The context, the actual context in which we have to reflect on to think of how can we change our training programs to accommodate all these new coming technologies. There are three main factors. Who will be training in the future, what this new environment will be, and how surgical training will be organized overall. Now, the new generations. We will be facing two new generations in the next 15 or 20 years. We already keep getting the millennials. They're already in medical school, and they will be going into their training soon. And they will be followed by Generation Z. Actually, millennials will probably be well prepared to the new challenges, to training, to do translational research, to training to transcatheter techniques. And why? Because they have some characteristics. They like research-based methods. They like to be able to find out by themselves, to search for the truth. They like the things that are relevant. And as you know, as we discuss this a bit later on, one of the good things of relational research is that it's relevant. So they like doing things which are actually relevant. They don't just learn to find out about facts which have no consequence. They're very rational. They don't recognize authority, and they want to know why. So just because Professor So has said something, that's not necessarily true. So they have this critical thinking, which is also very good for research. Okay, they will not spend too much time concentrated on something. They like to work in a relaxed environment. But sometimes the research facilities can offer this. And they're also very relational, because they were center for their parents and in their family. When they come to university, they like to relate and to talk and to be guided by the trainers. Now, Generation Z, I'll tell you, they will be much more complicated, and I think we will have to change more things of how we do that. I will not go into them because it will take them a few years to come to university. Now, what are the new working environments? First, the patients that we'll find, conditions and patients will be more complex. The patients will be older, will have more comorbidities. The treatment tools that we have are more difficult to use sometimes, robots, minimally invasive surgery, etc. But we will be very close looked upon. Our results will be scrutinized by many people and will not be allowed to make failures. Surgery, it is and will be value-driven. What does this mean? That means that we should not ask ourselves what's wrong with the patient, but what's wrong to this particular patient. It's not about doing so many bypass operations, so many valve replacements in a year. It's about the quality and the results of every operation that we do. Care will be centered on the patient. Patient will play a much important role in their care. And we will have to develop processes. So I can imagine that in the future, we might not have a department of cardiology and cardiac surgery, but we will have groups of people who are experts, for instance, in aortic valve disease, and that group will be formed by cardiologists, radiologists, cardiac surgeons who will have a particular interest and expertise in that process for the benefit of the patient. So that will change. We'll need to change our minds of how we work. Bioethics will be most important. The four principles of bioethics: beneficency, non-maleficency, justice, and independence. How we treat patients will have to change as well in this. And indeed, catheter techniques. And this is one of the aspects that we will discuss. And surgical training. Surgical training is also changing. There is tension between training and service. Traditionally, the residents were there to do much of the work. That might need to change. There will be less time to train because there's so many things to do. And most of the programs will be competence-based, so you will not be qualified as a cardiac surgeon because you've spent 5 years or 6 years in a unit, but you will be qualified as a cardiac surgeon because you have fulfilled certain competencies. So poor residents, I have to be a surgeon, I have to have my competencies, I cannot make mistakes because they are looking upon us so closely. Now the patient is the center, I'm not the center of the problem. And now I have to learn these catheter techniques, and I have to be a scientist. How do I do all this? This is a difficult question. First, why is good to do research? How can we convince trainees or residents that they have to do research? Well, I think there are two main benefits for research. One is that it promotes clinical excellence, and I'm pretty sure about that. And why does it promote clinical excellence? Well, it does because it promotes critical thinking. We stop and think, what we do, are we doing it right? It makes us keep up to date with the new developments in our areas of expertise. It makes us to set a standard. If I have a particular interest in mitral regurgitation and I know what the standards, I want to set these standards in my unit. Promotes the introduction of new technologies and innovation. So we stopped doing things because we have been doing this in the last 25 years. If you have an open mind, you ask, are we doing it right? So it promotes clinical excellence. But also improves the profile of your unit and hospital, and so that makes the brighter and best people to come over to your place, and brings technological developments to this place for the benefit of the patient. But we also have, as surgeons and physicians, an obligation to develop our profession forward. As it was said in my introduction, I spent some time in Leeds. This is the Leeds General Infirmary, the old building, and I used to walk every morning through that door in the arch. And I used to go through that corridor. And I didn't have to go up those stairs. I had to turn right, and our department was on the corner on the right. But I kept questioning myself, asking myself, who is that guy? Well, that guy, one day I went up the stairs and look, it was Lord Monyngham. And Lord Monyngham said something which impressed me very much that time. In 1926, at that time he was the president of the Royal College of Surgeons in England. He said that surgery in days to come will be advanced by men trained in the methods and imbued with the spirit of experimental research, though it will no doubt continue to be practiced to their profit by those who are merely craftsmen. But already then he was saying, we have the obligation to investigate and research to develop our specialty. I think that is a moral duty that all surgeons and physicians should have. And why translational research? Why do we talk so much about translational research? Let's reflect a bit on what is translational research. Translational research, in a few words, means from the bench to the bedside, and vice versa, because it's a two-way system. The National Institute for Research divides the translational research into two types, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is the one we probably are more familiar with. It's bringing the knowledge we acquire in the lab, in the cellular and molecular mechanism of the disease, the translation we do to develop new methods of treatment, diagnosis, prevention, etc. This T1, T2 of translational research, that's the application of the findings in clinical trials, in randomized trials, the transfer of that knowledge into daily clinical practice. So there are different aspects of translational research that we can take upon during our training. Okay, and the trainee, the resident say, well, so what do I research? What do I do? Well, one of the sayings that I followed in my life was said by Theodore Roosevelt. He was the 26th president of the United States. And he said something that impacted on me, and thus I followed his thoughts. Do what you can with what you have where you are. What does it mean? That you should not, if you are applying to the research, you should look for synergies, look for things that others are doing near you, and try to engage into those programs. Because it's very difficult to start from the very beginning. And in my own experience, that's what I have done. If I've been to different places, I've looked around, is there anything that they do that I might have an interest in? Well, that's what I will do. Let me talk a bit about my own experience with translational research. This is our research institute. We work within the university, but sometimes the universities have other interests and they are more focused on education. So our hospital decided to create its own institute for translational research. And this is where we have our lab. So when I got there, this was just being created, and we said that we wanted to do a cardiovascular translational lab there. One of the important things is that this is all about big team science. Nobody can do translational research by he or herself. You have to make a group, a good team of people to help you with the research. So we set up a lab. We have, as you can see, a number of equipment for basic science. And then we created a team. So this is our cardiovascular research team. This is a perfect mix between our hospital and the lab. And here you can see biologists, technicians, imaging cardiologists, clinical cardiologists, resident, surgeon. There are a few more than this, but we all work together in a true translational team. So once you've got the team and you have the different experiences and knowledge in the different processes of the translational research, you need to get support. Support from local institutes, from the hospital, from the regional institute and the national institutes, and that's what we have done, and also from the industry. We have a research program also with the industry, because you need some type of financial support and institutional support. Now, the other point of the discussion was percutaneous technique. How can we put all this together? Now, first, should we do this? Should we be trained in percutaneous techniques? And I was asked to write an editorial on this a few years ago in your intervention, so this was Apache territory, and you had to be careful. But what I said is there is no question about this. We must be trained in percutaneous techniques, or some of us must be trained in percutaneous technique, because, and this should be built into the training programs, because if we don't do this, we'll be left out, and we will be left out in the treatment of valvular heart disease. And I don't think that this is right. And why do I don't think this is right? For two main reasons. First, we have been treated valvular heart disease for decades. Nobody has better and more profound knowledge on the pathophysiology, natural history, and treatment of valvular heart disease. And we must be there. We have to be part of the picture. So for our benefit, but also for the benefit of the patient. This is, Maslow was a psychologist famous in the 60s and 70s of the 20th century. He has this law of the instrument. And he said, I suppose that it is tempting if the only tool you have is a hammer to treat everything as if it was a nail. For an interventional cardiologist with a TAVI, every aortic stenosis must be treated with a TAVI, because they don't have any other means of doing that. A surgeon who develops abilities in percutaneous techniques is in a very good position, equiposed position, to decide what is perfect, what is the best treatment for that particular patient. So, go back to the question: how do we do this? How can we put together training in a ever more demanding environment? So trainees, residents can do research, translational research in particular, and how can they develop skills in transcatheter techniques? Well, Professor Greenway was asked by the Royal Colleges of Surgery in the UK to write a paper on this, and after a few years he came up with a document called Shape of Training, Securing the Future of Excellent Patient Care. And the message there on how to deal with this problem is flexibility. So training programs should have enough leeway, enough flexibility, so residents can do either research during the training, and that can be done either during the training. You can take 1 or 2 years off to do training and then come back, or you can do part-time training, part-time science, and that's what we do. We tried that. Our commitment is to 80% of the residents to finish their training with a PhD, with a PhD degree, or about to finish the PhD degree, and they do it in a part-time manner. But you can equally stop, or you can do it just once you've done the training. When you do it, it's probably a matter of preferences. Equally, with the transcatheter, learning transcatheter techniques, that is a bit different. You should not do that part-time. unless in the current programs, trainees should dedicate a period of time, 6 to 12 months, fellowship, just doing this type of therapies if they want to learn how to do it. Because the future is not that we do an anterior thoracotomy, or we open the groin, or we do a mini sternotomy, or we prepare the subclavian artery. We should very much involved in the whole process, and in order to learn that, you need more than just a few weeks or just popping in and out. So this could be a dedicated period of time to learn transcatheter heart techniques. So they propose different pathways to do both. It's difficult to tell, but they propose taking time for research during the training, as I said, either part-time or just take time apart, and also the option to do a fellowship at the end of the training. So I agree flexibility is a key issue, but then we have to convince the trainees that at the end of the day it's their responsibility. And I would tell them, either you are on the driving seat, either you are the pilot or you are the passenger. Either they take you where others want to take you, or you go where you want to go. You can be the kind of people who look at things happening without having much to do with it, or you can be the type of people who make things happen. And I think that in order to be successful in training, and develop research skills and other skills like percutaneous skills, you should be in the driving seat. You should make one of those who make things happen and live your own life and not the life of the others. So, grazie mille.